Welcome back to the show. I am so excited to speak to my guest today. So I would love to have Nelia start off by telling us who you are and what you do in the events industry.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm an event freelancer. I have 25 years of experience in the event industry, which seems crazy. My background is in kind of running larger scale tech events, although I've recently been doing much smaller ones, and that's been actually really fun and much less chaotic. Although, let's be honest, we all love a little bit of chaos, right? That's why we do what we do. I'm also a speaker. I've spoken around disability advocacy and life with my own daughter who has a disability, as well as on event accessibility. And I have a new keynote that I'm really excited to get out there called When Life Happens, Turning the Mess into a Map. So that's a
Amazing.
little bit about me.
Amazing. And, we'll be talking about that. But before we get into that, you said the small events are still the chaos. I once told a VP there's no such thing as a small event. There's events and then bigger events because they still require just as much logistics and complicated things as a big event. But that's a rant for another day. But yeah, would love to, dive in more on your new keynote and how you're kind of helping people manage or think about managing their lives because we know events are chaotic. Like there are 800 podcasts and thousands of LinkedIn posts about the stress of working in events. It's always rated as one of the top most stressful jobs in terms of mental health. So, like, what is it that when people are thinking about managing their life and an events career, what is like the first thing that you want people to think of?
So I think one of the things that's really important is perspective, because it is one of the most stressful jobs. A little bit about me. So my daughter, who is now, she's going to be 19 next month. She was born with a significant disability, and then later on in life, when she was 11, she developed epilepsy. So there's times when she has multiple seizures every night. And so I remember one time being in the ICU with her and being stressed out about my own job. And then looking at these doctors, nurses, and thinking, when they have a bad day, someone died, and that is perspective that I really kind of carry on with me. Um, and it's not helpful to tell people your job isn't important because of course it is. Like our job is important in what we do. But for me, kind of keeping that perspective of the big picture in life has really, really been helpful for me when I'm completely stressed out at work with all the details and all of that. So that perspective I think is one. Another thing that I know my own challenges have taught me is to let go of the constant need for control.
Mm-hmm.
We are event people. We we like having control over everything, and there's just some things we don't have control over.
Yeah.
That's a hard lesson to learn, but really, really helpful to focus on what you control and not what you can't.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so much to unpack there, right? And I often will tell people that most problems are figure outable, right? Like most problems have a solution, most things we can resolve, and events people are used to being the calm in the storm, right? And it's like, okay, and part of it is probably experience. Like, okay, I've been doing it 15 years. I've seen this problem 100 times, and the person who's coming to me, the client, or an executive or whoever your stakeholder is might not have seen it because they're not doing this every day, right? And so, being able to frame that as, okay, how many times is it not unfigure about outable and like how many times is it actually that serious, because in events like we do have to be careful, like there are some serious risks, right? Like if someone has an allergy or a medical issue or there are life and death moments that can happen at events. But for the most part, knock wood, that is not what we're dealing with, right? We're dealing with a mic that cuts out. We're dealing with a shipment that is missing. We're dealing with the food that gets delivered at the wrong time, right? And all of those things have a solution if we just take a moment to take a breath and think, okay, well, what is best for our attendees and what like to make it a smoother experience for them.
Yeah, and as you're talking, something came to mind. So I know when I travel, I always have like my list of three things, like make sure I like the three things that I can't just buy somewhere, right? That I need to have. And for events, it's interesting because one of the big things that can be serious is an emergency, right? And I think it's also a good idea to have like a top, like these are the things that I really need to focus on that are in my control, and that could be huge, right? Like an emergency, allergies, anything like that. So I'm gonna build my top three or four now that I chatting with you about it. But we tend to focus on the little things and not on things like that aren't immediately in front of us, like emergencies.
Yeah, yeah. And, thinking about control, I think, and again, I feel like it's a bit of like a muscle that you flex over time of learning when do you have control over a situation and when do you not have control and when is it okay? And when is it okay to let people kind of falter a little bit or make certain mistakes because at the end of the day, like it's not going to be the end of the world if somebody missteps in a bit of a way. Or, I had this conversation recently with a group of event planners and we were talking about control. And as an event planner, when you go to an event that is not your event, it's really hard to let up control. But I find that now over time, I'm like, okay, like, unless I really saw something like dangerous happening at the event, it's not up to me to fix. And like, unless they ask me for my opinion, it's not my responsibility to give it, right? So if I see something at an event that I'm like, that's not how I would do it, or this is like really disorganized, or this is like so cringe. It's like, okay, I can just keep that to myself. Like, it's okay. Like, life will go on. We will all go on. And probably 90% of the people in the room won't even remember that it happened, right? But it's figuring out, okay, when is control like absolutely necessary? And when is it like, when is it that you're holding on to so much control that it's actually harming you?
So I actually, excuse me, have the opposite experience because when I go to an event, I'm like, it's almost like when I hear a kid crying on the plane that's not mine. And I'm like, oh, thank God this is not my problem.
Yeah, yeah. But I still feel like I feel bad when I see
Yeah,
it
no.
going wrong. But if it's not my event, I'm like, okay, like I just have to, like with a little kid, like you gotta let them take their wobbly steps and then just let them be okay with that, those first few, right? And it's, realizing, and again, because I think there are some folks, especially in our industry and many industries, like when you are used to having to be so connected to the details that you can let your need for control impede your ability to do your job because you're either micromanaging or you're wasting time on things that are not really moving the needle, or you're not setting your team up for success because you won't let go of certain details. And then on site, well, no one knows it. Oh, it's in your brain. Oh, it's in your clipboard. It's like, okay, well, what is the, I heard this described as the won the lottery problem instead of, hit by a bus. But like, if someone won the lottery tomorrow and was not at your event, like,
Yeah.
how will that event run without you? And if your answer is, oh, well, I know all the information, you're harming yourself as much as you're harming your event.
Well, and it's good. So I have this story. The first time I worked an event, it was I think the event had about 28,000 people. That was my first event. I had never been to a trade show. And now the people above me all got promoted. And so I had way more responsibility on this event than I should have had. And I remember at one point, a couple days into move in, I went into the bathroom and I put down the toilet seat and I sat there and I went, I'm going to quit. This is awful. Like, this is so stressful, but I can't quit now because obviously they need me. I wouldn't be able to look at myself. But when this is over, like, I never have to do this again. And that was 25 years ago. But I still think about that to this day of like, that was rock bottom. And I'm still doing it. I got through it. And, so I don't recommend putting anyone in that position where it's that awful, but it gives people some resiliency to kind of see that oh, I can do it. I was able to kind of get out of that and find the solutions and get through. And that does, like I said, give people a lot of resiliency and self-confidence.
Yeah. Well, and it's a delicate balance because it's also the manufactured emergencies, right? Like we didn't decide on this soon enough, and so now it's we can't get a venue, or things are more expensive, shipping is more expensive, it's the turnaround times are faster, everybody's stressed out, right? And so recognizing when it's like the true stress of the event or just people like kind of disrespecting the process, right? And again, like the same group of planners are talking about, when you're working with stakeholders and you're explaining to them like, if you don't make a decision by this date, like this is the outcome, right? And letting people live with those decisions or lack of decisions, right? Because yes, our jobs are stressful, but like how many times do we see it that it's like, well, the committee decided, or this was the stakeholder that was responsible for approving it, but now everybody else has had an opinion, and now we're pushed back and we're up against the wire again. So, and I think it's also like understanding like the balance between building your resiliency, but also like not allowing people to disrespect you in the meantime, right? And it's
Yeah,
a
and
tough
also setting
balance.
boundaries, right? Like
Yeah.
in this job, we have to set boundaries with deadlines and expectations. And if this doesn't happen, then this. It's setting those boundaries are really, really important to mental health too.
Yeah.
Like work boundaries and personal boundaries as well.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those things that people people might be frustrated with you at first, but they'll also kind of respect it in the long run if you are firm on your no's. And especially like I know that yes, no is a complete sentence, but also sometimes providing people with the context of no, we're not going to do that, and here's why: because it'll cost this much more money, because the team is already at capacity, because I'm already at capacity, and other things are going to slip if we add this in or we make these changes. Like these are the consequences, and sometimes it's explaining to people you're bound. Like again, no is a complete sentence, but when people have that understanding of no, I have to put up this boundary because if I don't, all this other chaos will ensue. And you'll have my mom always says like if you have a capacity problem, like you just create more capacity problems by not solving the capacity. Like it's like this, the snake eating its tail, right? Of
Yeah.
you think, oh, well, we're making it work. Well, you're not really making it work. And just because you keep pulling off the miracle and pulling it out doesn't mean that you can keep doing that, right? Because your vendors will get burned out, your teams will get burned out. Like there's so much more that goes into it. So I think providing the context of this is why we do these things this way, this is why this process is in place, and we can talk about making the process easier for everybody involved. But there needs to be this kind of structure so that the wheels don't come off in the middle of it.
Yeah, I love solving problems and living with a little bit of chaos. Like that's what I'm really good at is like coming in and being able to solve problems and make it work. So, because of that and because I kind of enjoy that, it can be really hard to set boundaries, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like, no, we'll make it work. But and we do solve problems and we need to do that on the fly, but not when we're creating more problems for
Yeah.
ourselves, right? By not setting those boundaries. So it's really, really important. And also when, we're talking about when life gets hard, there's a lot of us are going through things in our personal lives. And so kind of setting those boundaries, I've noticed that when I set boundaries around either work schedule or hey, my daughter has a big has is having a really hard time with seizures right now or whatever it is, that people are very good about respecting those boundaries. So I think kind of setting those boundaries in our kind of personal lives and being okay with kind of communicating that with those that we work with is really important as well.
Yeah, and it's, you can have boundaries with people at work where you don't need to share everything, but I think that it's really important to have the people that you can trust to talk to, right? And like, I've had bosses who have been great at this. I've also had bosses who were not so great at this, but like the ones that were great at it were like the ones that I could say like, "Hey, something's going on at home, like, we just had a death in the family or someone's ill and I need a bit of grace right now." And they knew how to kind of navigate the rest of the company to say, "Hey, Shenandoah is not available right now, but she'll be back online in the next couple days. In the meantime, here's how I can help. Everything else can wait." And having people that you can trust to tell them like, today's not a great day. When I've had people reporting to me, I want them to tell me like, something's going on. I can't be available the way that I was yesterday, but here's how, like, here's what you need to know, and like, here's when I'll be back online, kind of thing, right? And in events, it can be, especially if you're getting close to an event, like there are certain deadlines that have to be respected and known, but also again, like that, like winning the lottery, scenario of everybody in your org should be able to come in and out of a role because the processes should be there to support it, right? Like I should be able to go look at, I'm a huge Asana fan. I should be able to go and look at their Asana board and say, "Hey, tomorrow this, presentation is due or something is due," that I can kind of step in. And again, if you're not putting those in place, like you're doing more harm than good than the good you think you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things that has helped me is having, because I'm on my own, and so I don't have, you know, a 9 to 5 schedule I need to work.
Yeah.
And there are times where I work best at, you know, 10 o'clock at night because that's when the house is quiet. If I'm having, one of those days, a chaotic day, and I know that it's kind of a mixed bag because I see on LinkedIn all the time, like, why are you working on a weekend or why are you working in the evening? And I understand that, but at the same time, I personally may need that time during the day. And so I'm working in the evening or on the weekend because it's the best time for me to work. So I've seen the little signature line. Have you seen this
Yeah.
where it's I'm sending this message outside of hours because it's when I work best, but please you send it whenever you work, it's
I am
best.
I am also a huge, like, I shout from the rooftops, schedule your messages, schedule your emails, schedule your Slacks. Like if it's not, if you're on site and it needs to be answered immediately, or you're like in the thick of it where it needs to be answered immediately, of course send it in real time. But I will often, like, if I'm working at a not a standard 9 to 5, now that I'm on my own, but even before, I didn't necessarily want people to know that I was working after hours. And I would just schedule those messages. I often joke too, like if it's after 4 o'clock on a Friday and it is not an urgent, you are gonna get a scheduled message from me at 8:15 on Monday, because I don't want you to get this on Friday at 4 o'clock and think that I needed an answer. If I need an answer, I'll message you. But using the tools that are available to like let me work when I want to work, but also not seeming too available, right? Because if I had the first job I had, I replied to every email I got because in my mind it was faster and easier. But then I'm like, oh, I'm just making it seem like I'm always available. And I had a coworker years ago who was constantly emailing at all hours of the night. And this was back when we were in an office. So like we were in an office 9 to 5. Like it's not like we were flexing our time. And then
Yeah.
she would be sending emails at 11 midnight, and I'm like, do you not, do you have an issue with time management? Do you have too much on your plate? Or are you just trying to show off that you're online at 11 o'clock? And that's not the flex you think it is, right? I think now that many of us are working remotely, and, people might shift an hour to go take the kids to school or to an appointment or whatever, there is that like bit more of an understanding. But it's when people are like, oh, like, just look how busy I am, right? And so I think that we are now getting accustomed to, like, I know I have one client that almost like clockwork at 7 o'clock, I get a barrage of Slack messages because that's clearly when they're like catching up on their day after being in meetings all day. Like, it's all like I could almost set an alarm to it, right? Like, it's just that's clearly the time that works for them. I used to know a guy who, like, he would put the kids to bed typically fall asleep while putting the kids to bed and then wake up at 11 o'clock at night and start working because he had gone home early to take care of the kids, right? So I think it's, yeah, like saying, hey, these are my working hours. I think it's using the tools like to schedule it and things like that. Then that way, that just means that people then aren't getting the notification, aren't getting the noise, right? That can be a bit of a distraction. And like sometimes I'll even answer an email on my phone and be like, I'm scheduling this for tomorrow because I don't want you to know that I saw it now.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. I do like the signature. I do like that message though
Yeah,
of I don't expect you, but this is what works for me, and it's okay for it to be different. It's
yeah,
okay for it to be like, who said it had to be 9 to 5? You know what I
yeah,
mean? So sometimes people's brains work better at different times.
for
So
sure.
I like that that's kind of something that's been more and more kind of understood ever since COVID when people started working from home.
Yeah. And
I would
especially
love,
like I've often worked on teams across North America, right? And so I might be emailing you at like your 6 a.m., but it's really my 9 a.m. And you might be emailing me at 5 p.m. before you sign off for the day, but that's 8 p.m. for me, right? So like that, I think if you're in an org or have clients that are working across time zones, like that's another big factor too of like I'm emailing you at your 6 a.m. I don't think that you're online at 6 a.m. Maybe you are. Like, I'm not usually online at 6 a.m. unless I'm on site, but like, it's just depends on, what works for you, right? Like, some folks want to get an early start and wrap it up early, but others are like, I'll take my time and, arrive by 10 and work later. So I think it's, like you said, I think and I hope that in the last 5.5 years that we've learned nothing else that we can be flexible in the way that we work. And not only is it better for getting things done, like when you're most productive, but also allows people to like have more of a work life balance, right? Because again, I can go and to this appointment, I can go take care of this thing during the hours that work for them, and then I can get what I need done at a different time.
yeah, absolutely. I don't know when you started working from home, but I've been doing it for about 20 years. So back when it was very like hush
Yeah.
hush, I shouldn't even be working from home. So, and everyone used to always say, I think I would hate working from home. I think I would hate working from home. And now it's become such the norm, which is, I love because now everyone has joined my world of
Yeah.
flexibility. So yeah, it's good for those of us who need that flexibility in our lives in
Yeah,
order to
and I think there's an argument for like the hybrid. Like there are some days that I'm like, my husband will joke like I can tell when you've not talked to enough people in the day. Like there is like, the water cooler effect of like, oh, you're just sitting around, you
yes.
hear things that you wouldn't learn, just being by yourself. I my first experience with working from home was like starting in like 2018. It was like one day a week. And it was like nice to have like one day a week where I didn't have to take the hour train and could throw in a load of laundry and could wear soft pants and like that kind of thing, right? So it's it is interesting, and I think it allows us to build in so much more flexibility, especially like in a role like ours, like when I would work in house even, and it'd be like, okay, yeah, like I've now just worked, you know, 3 12-hour days in a row, you're probably not going to hear from me so much on Thursday and Friday because I've been on site all week and now these things are not as important and my calendar is blocked because I need to recover, I need to catch up, I need to like, our job is so physical as well as mental. Like I know my feet are hurting from being on site yesterday, right? And so it's like I know that you kind of need that, and you're mentioning like you were recently traveling and the jet lag and like getting readjusted after that, right? I think it's wherever we can find flexibility in our roles is so important because we yes we work sometimes in 9 to 5s, or like even if you're working in a house you're kind of working a 9 to 5, but you're really not, like you are different than everybody else.
Yeah. But it's so much fun.
I mean, my mother always tells me I'm crazy, and I'm like, but there's nothing else I'd rather be doing. Like that, I cannot imagine doing anything else. But I mean, we are coming up to time, so would love to know, is there anything else that if someone takes one thing away about, kind of work-life balance and managing, life and events, like what is that, and where can people find out more about your speaking sessions and more about you out in the industry?
Yeah, so one of the things, takeaway that I love and that I think about all the time is you can't always control what happens, but you control how you respond to it. Right. So that's one I love and I kind of carry through with me. So you can find me on LinkedIn and also on nelianunes.com. So NELIANUNES.com if you want to reach out. But yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear from you all.
Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.